all this is pervaded by the Lord. I mean, just
Mhm.
consider the sheer absolute weight of that opening statement.
Right, it's massive.
It is because, in the landscape of modern spirituality, we are almost always handed this very strict, uncompromising binary.
Yeah, the classic either or.
Exactly. You are either the ascetic who, renounces the world, goes to live in a cave, and basically starves your ego into submission.
Right.
Or you're the materialist who completely embraces the world, loses yourself in the rat race, and just tries to extract as much pleasure as possible before the clock runs out.
Yeah, it's like we're told to choose, right? The
Yeah.
spiritual, the physical.
But then you crack open the Isha Upanishad, and within the very first breath, that entire either-or paradigm is it's utterly shattered.
Completely dismantled.
Right. We are looking at a philosophical landscape today that demands the ultimate paradox. I mean, it asks us to unite complete, absolute renunciation with total, unbridled enjoyment.
It is basically the absolute definition of a spiritual tightrope walk.
Yeah.
And it completely challenges our underlying assumptions about what it actually means to be a conscious entity interacting with a physical environment.
It really does. But before we attempt this balancing act, I want to invite you, our listener, to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and please share your reflections on today's text in the comments.
Yes, definitely do that.
Because we absolutely love reading how these frameworks challenge your own perspectives.
We really do. It's the best part.
Okay, so let's lay out the mission for this deep dive. We are exploring the Isha Upanishad, and we're utilizing the translation by Vidyavachaspati V. Panoli, but, and this is key, we are looking at it specifically through the intensely rigorous, non-dual commentary of the great philosopher Shankaracharya.
Right, as synthesized by Swami Nirmalananda Giri.
Exactly.
And, the brevity of this text is really what makes it so striking. I mean,
Yeah.
out of the 108 principal Upanishads, the Isha is one of the absolute shortest.
Well, how sure are we talking?
18 mantras. Yeah, that is the entirety of the text. 18 short verses. Yet it sits at the absolute bedrock of the Vedic tradition.
That's incredible.
I mean, Mahatma Gandhi even claimed that if all other scriptures were somehow reduced to ashes, and only the first verse of the Isha Upanishad survived in human memory.
Just the first verse.
Just the first verse. He said the core of the philosophy would remain completely intact.
Which is just a staggering claim for a text you could, read aloud in maybe 3 minutes?
Literally 3 minutes, yeah.
But, our goal isn't just a surface reading today. Our mission is to really decode Shankaracharya's specific perspective on non-dual realization.
Right, which is that concept that the individual self is entirely mathematically one with Brahman.
The ultimate reality.
Exactly.
And more than that, we are going to dissect the actual mechanics of how you can practice this paradoxical art. Renouncing the world while simultaneously acting within it without getting tangled up in outcome dependency.
Right, so let's start with the architecture of that opening statement you mentioned.
Just do it.
So the translation goes, all this should be covered by the Lord whatsoever moves on the earth. By such a renunciation, protect thyself. Covet not the wealth of others.
Okay, covered by the Lord.
Yeah, and Shankaracharya's commentary on that specific phrase is fascinating because he introduces this dual mechanism for how we perceive reality.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, the literal translation implies that God envelops all things like a blanket.
Right.
But Shankaracharya argues it actually means we must actively pierce the covering of relative reality.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so whatever we experience through our sensory apparatus, sight, sound, thought, is essentially a door. It's a covering.
Okay, let me challenge the utility of that metaphor for a second.
Metaphor.
If it's a door, the natural human instinct is to, knock on it or try to open it, right?
Sure.
But we don't do that. We treat the door as the final destination. We obsess over the grain of the wood on the door, we paint it, we put fancy locks on it, we fight our neighbors over who has the better door.
Right, and that is the exact mechanism of ignorance or avidya in this framework.
Sure.
We totally mistake the covering for the contents behind it.
Yeah, we get stuck on the surface.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shankaracharya provides a second, incredibly pragmatic application for this mantra, too.
Okay.
He suggests that cognitively, God should be placed between the perceiver and the perceived object.
Between them.
Is
How
that-
does that work?
So when you look at a tree or a car or even another human being, your perception shouldn't jump directly to the material form. You sort of superimpose the divine reality first.
Right.
And only secondarily do you perceive the localized material thing itself.
There's actually an instructive narrative in the source material that tries to illustrate this omnipresence. It's told by Sri A.B. Purani.
Oh, the story of the Brahmin boy.
Yes, the story of the Brahmin boy and the king. The setup is classic. You have this tyrannical king who summons a Brahmin and demands answers to 3 impossible questions.
Right, under threat of death.
Exactly. The penalty for failure is death. And the questions are, where is God? Why don't I see him? And what does he do all day?
Which is just a totally high-stakes philosophical inquiry.
Right. And the Brahmin is completely paralyzed because, as you know, you can't easily articulate the absolute using the language of the relative.
It's impossible.
So his son steps in, takes his place before the king, and asks for a bowl of milk.
Which is a bold move when your life is on the line.
It's extremely bold. He asks for milk, and then he requests that the milk be churned into butter. And once the butter forms, the boy claims the first 2 questions are answered.
And you have to imagine the king's frustration here.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
The king wants a metaphysical thesis, and he's basically handed dairy products.
Right, but the boy's logic is airtight within the framework of non-duality. The king asks, where the butter was before it was churned.
And the king admits, in the milk.
Exactly, and the boy says, in what part of the milk?
In all of it.
Right. And the boy establishes that God pervades reality in the exact same way, not just sitting in some specific localized corner of the universe.
Right, intrinsically woven into the fabric of everything.
Yes.
That answers the where, but the why don't I see him is really the more crucial part of this analogy.
It is.
Because the boy says to the king, because you do not churn your mind.
Churning the mind. That's such a powerful image.
It really is. I want to pause on that word for a second. Churning. Because it completely refutes the idea that spiritual realization is this passive state of just like relaxing into the universe.
Yeah, just floating along.
Right. You can stare at a bowl of milk for a decade. It will rot, but it will never spontaneously turn into butter without the introduction of mechanical friction.
The friction is the entire point. I mean, meditation, self-inquiry, the rigorous dismantling of the ego, these are highly active cognitive processes.
Yeah.
You're literally agitating your baseline state of consciousness to force that underlying essence to coagulate and become visible.
That's a great way to put it. And then for the third question, what does God do all day? The boy makes the king step down, sits on the throne himself, and says, this is what God does. One moment you were up there, I was down here, now it's reversed. God perpetually lifts up and casts down.
Which just highlights the relentless flux of the material world.
Exactly. But if the material world is in constant chaotic flux, and the underlying reality is this unmoving Lord, how does Shankaracharya map the relationship between the two?
Well, he uses probably the most famous epistemological analogy in Advaita Vedanta.
The rope and the snake.
The rope and the snake. So imagine you're walking down a dimly lit path at night.
Okay, setting the scene.
You see a coil on the ground, and your brain instantly pattern matches it to a threat. Do you perceive a snake?
Instantly.
Right. Your sympathetic nervous system triggers, adrenaline spikes, your pupils dilate, your heart rate explodes. You might even hear it hiss or see its scales shimmering in the moonlight.
I mean, the physiological cascade is entirely real to your body in that moment.
It's 100% real to you. But then, someone brings a lantern, and the light reveals it is merely a coiled piece of rope.
The relief would be intense.
Right. Now, Shankaracharya asks us to parse the reality of that event. The snake was a complete illusion. It possessed zero objective reality.
Right.
However, the impression of the snake and the terror it produced in the observer was absolute reality to the observer in that moment.
Yeah, your heart was actually pounding.
Exactly. So God is the rope, the reality, the ultimate substrate. The material world is the snake, the illusion. It's the superimposition of form, danger, and separation generated by our own ignorant minds.
Let's test the limits of a modern equivalent to this because I think it helps ground it.
Sure.
Think about virtual reality. If I put on a high-end VR headset and play a horror game, intellectually, I know the monster rendering in front of me is just code and pixels.
Right. You know it's not actually in your living room.
Exactly. I know the rope in this case is just the computer processor, but my nervous system doesn't care at all. My palms sweat, I flinch, I experience the impression of the snake.
That's a great comparison.
But here is where the analogy kind of breaks down, and I want you to address this. In VR, I remember putting the headset on.
Ah, yes.
I have a baseline reality to compare it to, but in Shankaracharya's model, We are born with the headset permanently affixed to our retina.
We don't know anything else.
Right. So how can we possibly be expected to know it's an illusion if the simulation is literally the only environment we've ever interacted with?
Well, that is the core dilemma of the human condition, isn't it?
Yeah.
We lack a localized memory of putting the headset on because the ego, the actual construct asking the question, was born inside the simulation.
The ego is part of the code.
Exactly. But Shankaracharya points out that there are glitches in the matrix, so to speak.
Glitches. Like what?
Like moments of profound stillness, the gap between thoughts, the intuitive flash of interconnectedness we sometimes just randomly feel. These are moments the lantern flickers.
Okay, I see.
And the Upanishads themselves serve as this external lantern, trying to introduce data from outside the simulation to provoke that churning process we talked about.
Okay, but if we accept the premise that the world is a superimposed illusion, a VR game, we hit a massive contradiction in the very same line of the text.
Which is?
Well, Mantra 1 says, all this should be covered by the Lord. By such a renunciation, protect thyself. And then it says, enjoy.
Right. Enjoy through renunciation.
If it's a fake snake, if it's a stressful, terrifying simulation, why on earth does the Upanishad instruct us to enjoy it?
Because of the causal link between the illusion and human suffering.
What do you mean?
We don't suffer just because we see the snake. We suffer because we try to capture the snake or we try to hoard the pixels.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The mantra ends with, covet not the wealth of others. See, the root of suffering is outcome dependency and the desire to possess.
To own the illusion.
Right. When you turn the mind and realize that the object you desire is an illusion, and more importantly, that the ego desiring it is also an illusion, the grasping mechanism certainly breaks.
Because you can't hoard virtual gold coins in a physical bank account.
Exactly. It's pointless.
Mm-hmm.
And when the exhausting, relentless effort of trying to hoard the illusion finally ceases, what remains?
I don't know. What's left?
Pure observation.
Yeah.
Pure witness consciousness. You can finally just sit back in the theater and marvel at the cinematography of the universe.
Oh, I love that.
You can enjoy the world precisely because you are no longer burdened by the delusion that you own it or that you even can own it.
There is actually a poem in Swami Nirmalanandagiri's commentary that captures the absolute starkness of this realization. It's beautiful. Let me read a piece of it.
Please do.
It goes, God and I in space alone, and nobody else in view. And where are the people, O Lord? I said. The earth below and the sky o'erhead, and the dead whom once I knew. That was a dream, God smiled and said. A dream that seemed to be true. There were no people, living or dead. There was no earth and no sky o'erhead. There was only myself and you.
It gives you chills.
It really does. And it finishes with, nay, those were dreams, the great God said. Dreams that have ceased to be. There are no such things as fear or sin. There is no you have never been. There is nothing at all but me.
There is no, you have never been. I mean, to the unexamined mind, that line is pure existential terror.
It sounds like psychological annihilation. It sounds like death.
It does. But to the refined intellect, it is the ultimate emancipation. Think about it. The thing you have spent your entire life defending, feeding, stressing over, and mourning this fragile construct called me is a ghost.
It's just a program in the headset.
Right. It doesn't need to be protected because it never actually existed. When the lantern reveals the rope, the fear of the snake doesn't just diminish. It becomes mathematically impossible.
But wait, let me push back on that. Because if we follow that logic to its ultimate conclusion, it seems like it breeds a very dangerous kind of nihilism.
How so?
Well, if there is no me, no you, and the entire world is a dream, the most rational response seems to be absolute apathy.
Yeah.
Like, why go to work? Why raise children? Why try to cure diseases? Spiritual realization could so easily become an excuse for extreme, paralyzing passivity.
Yes, the nothing matters, so will do nothing trap. Which brings us directly to Mantra 2, where the Isha Upanishad aggressively dismantles any attempt to use non-duality as an excuse for apathy.
Okay, what does Mantra 2 say?
Listen to the instruction. It says, by performing karma in this world should one yearn to live 100 years. Thus action does not bind thee, the doer. There is no other way than this.
The word yearn is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It really is.
Because it completely reframes the ascetic ideal. It's not telling us to just endure 100 years of suffering until we are mercifully released from the simulation.
Yeah, not at all.
It tells us to actively desire a full century-long life of action.
The Upanishad is fiercely anti-passivity. It demands engagement. But the paradox is embedded in that second half of the phrase. Thus, action does not bind thee.
Right.
The commentary heavily references the Bhagavad Gita here to explain the mechanism of karma yoga. The critical insight is that action itself, like the physical or cognitive expenditure of energy, has absolutely no binding power.
So the action is neutral.
Completely neutral. Writing code, building a bridge, cooking a meal. These actions do not bind you to the illusion.
So what constitutes the binding power? If the action is neutral, where is the trap?
The trap is the desire for the fruit of the action. This is where we have to separate desire from execution. If you write a novel and your internal equilibrium is entirely dependent on hitting the bestseller list, you are bound.
Because you've attached your ego to the result.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are chained to a future outcome over which you have zero control. If the market rejects the book, your psychological state collapses.
The text calls this the wasting fever of desire. It's like a chronic inflammation of the psyche. We are perpetually craving, projecting into the future, demanding that the universe conform to our specific preferences.
Sri Ramakrishna had a brilliant metric for this. He said, if you can weigh salt, you can weigh sugar.
What does that mean in this context?
It means if you possess true spiritual acuity, it will manifest as absolute competence in your material life.
Really?
Yeah. Non-attachment is routinely misunderstood as doing a sloppy, indifferent job because, none of it matters.
Right, the apathy trap again.
That is a massive misreading. True karma yoga requires you to apply 100% of your skill, focus, and intellect to the action itself. You perfect the craft.
You weigh the sugar perfectly.
Yes. But the moment the action is completed, you ruthlessly sever your emotional connection to the outcome.
Okay, let's ground this in a concrete exercise for the listener, something to really bridge this ancient philosophy with modern professional life.
I love that idea.
Let's call it the detached draft.
Okay, how does it work?
So tomorrow, you are likely facing a task at work that generates anxiety. Maybe it's pitching a client, submitting a big report, or having a difficult conversation with a partner.
And that anxiety exists entirely because you are living in the future, terrified of their reaction.
Exactly. It's pure outcome dependency. So tomorrow, try this. Enter a pure flow state with the task itself. Optimize the report. Choose your words for the presentation with absolute precision.
Right. Do the work flawlessly.
Do it perfectly. But the millisecond you hit send on that email or the moment you step away from the podium, consciously execute a mental cutoff.
A total severance.
Yes. Tell yourself, my jurisdiction ended with the action. The result belongs to the mechanics of the universe. And then I want you to pay attention to the physical sensation in your body when you drop that mental weight.
It literally feels like a neurological reset.
It really does. You can feel the tension leave your shoulders.
Because it is the practical application of separating the ego from the event. When your intellect is cleared of the delusion that you control the fruits of your labor, you become totally indifferent to success or failure.
You are no longer held hostage by a timeline that hasn't happened yet.
And that is exactly how a person can joyfully live 100 years, like the mantra says. The wasting fever is cured.
I mean, it sounds amazing, but I'm not fully convinced it's that clean in practice.
Why not?
What happens to the person who simply refuses to do this? The person who looks at this philosophy and says, no, my ambition, my anxiety, my obsession with outcomes is what gives me my edge. I refuse to detach.
The person clinging to the snake.
Right. What is the consequence of holding on to the snake?
Well, the Upanishad doesn't mince words about the consequence. Mantra 3 delivers a pretty brutal diagnosis.
Hit me with it.
It says, those worlds of Asura's demons are enshrouded by blinding gloom. Those who are the slayers of the self go to them after death.
Slayers of the self. We need to clarify this terminology immediately. Because to a Western ear, worlds of demons sounds like a literal theological threat. It sounds like Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, fire and brimstone.
Yeah.
But in the Vedantic framework, Asuras and Devas are not mythological entities fighting with pitchforks and lightning bolts.
Yeah. What are they then?
They are phenomenological states of consciousness.
Okay.
A Deva state is a psyche illuminated by self-awareness and unity. An Asura state is a psyche that has actively chosen to obscure and darken its inner light through extreme material identification.
So it's basically psychological self-abandonment.
Yes.
By hyper-identifying with the temporary, my bank account, my physical appearance, my social status, I am systematically suffocating my awareness of the eternal. I am literally slaying my true nature.
And the blinding gloom it mentions isn't a geographical location you are banished to after you die.
Mm-hmm.
It is the immediate subjective reality you inhabit right now.
Right now.
Yes. Think about the internal world of someone entirely driven by ego. They live in a state of perpetual threat assessment.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Everyone is a competitor. Every loss is a tragedy. Aging is a horrifying decline toward oblivion. They have built a psychological prison of total darkness.
That's a terrifying way to live. But if the penalty for slaying the self is living in a self-generated hell, the obvious imperative is to intimately understand what the self actually is.
Which is what the next few mantras do.
Right. Mantras 4 through 8 attempt to define it, but they do so through a series of intense, seemingly impossible paradoxes.
They really stretch the mind.
Listen to mantra 4. It says, unmoving, it is one faster than the mind. Remaining static, it overtakes others that run. How do we even unpack this?
It's a riddle.
It is. How can something that never moves be faster than human thought? The mind can project itself to the edge of the known universe in a fraction of a second.
Right. Well, to understand this, we really have to rethink our definitions of speed and distance.
Okay.
Speed is the time it takes an object to traverse from point A to point B.
Simple physics.
Right. Even thought requires a minute temporal duration. But the self, pure, undifferentiated consciousness, is omnipresent.
It's everywhere.
It doesn't travel from A to B because it is the substrate that actually contains A and B. It overtakes the running mind because no matter how fast or how far the mind projects itself, the self is already there waiting for it.
Ah, I see. It's like the canvas.
The canvas.
Yeah, think of a painting. The mind is the brushstroke. The paint is being violently, rapidly smeared across the surface, creating forms and shapes in these dynamic, fast-moving scenes.
I like that.
But the canvas itself never moves. It is utterly static. Yet without the unmoving canvas, the movement of the paint has absolutely no reality, no space to even exist.
That is a perfect analogy. The self is the actionless witness. In fact, Mantra 8 describes it as bodiless, pure, untouched by sin or virtue.
It just watches.
It simply illuminates the activity of the intellect and the body without ever being altered by them, just like the canvas isn't changed by the color of the paint.
But let me push back on the utility of that realization for a second. If I am the canvas, right, and I realize my true nature is this untouched, unmoving substrate, how does that actually change the way I interact with the paint?
What do you mean?
How does it alter my behavior toward my family, my coworkers, or, strangers on the street? Does it just make me aloof?
No, quite the opposite. It creates a fundamental restructuring of your morality. It moves it from a system of enforced rules like thou shalt not do this to a system of undeniable logic.
Okay, logic how?
Mantras 6 and 7 articulate this beautifully. Let me quote it. He who perceives all beings in the self alone, and the self in all beings, does not entertain any hatred on account of that perception. When a man realizes that all beings are but the self, what delusion is there, what grief to that perceiver of oneness?
Wow. It makes hatred mathematically impossible.
It really does. If you experience the reality that the conscious observer looking out of your eyes is literally the exact same localized point of consciousness looking out of the eyes of your adversary, hatred ceases to make sense.
It would be like your right hand declaring a blood feud against your left hand.
Exactly. It is a biological absurdity.
The commentary actually notes that when Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, he wasn't just giving like a polite social guideline.
Right. It wasn't just be nice.
He was stating an ontological fact. Your neighbor is yourself. And the byproduct of that realization isn't just love, it's the complete cessation of grief.
Yes.
If the forms are just temporary swirls of paint, but the canvas is indestructible, the terror of loss loses its grip.
But here we arrive at probably the most dangerous logical trap in the entire text.
Right, because if I realize the canvas is the only truth and the paint is just a fleeting illusion, the rational move is to just stop painting.
The ascetic trap.
Exactly. Why engage with the illusion at all? Why not just abandon my job, abandon my responsibilities, go sit in a quiet room somewhere and contemplate the canvas for the rest of my life?
And this exact assumption leads to the most jarring paradox in the Isha Upanishad. Mantras 9 through 11 deal with the synthesis of knowledge, which is vidya, and action, which is avidya.
I want the listener to really lean in for this part, because the setup in Mantra 9 sounds like a total contradiction of everything we just learned.
It really does.
It says, those who worship a vidya action born of ignorance go to pitch darkness. Okay, that tracks with what we've discussed. But then it says, but to a greater darkness than this go those who are devoted to vidya.
It's shocking when you first read it.
Wait, devoted to spiritual knowledge? People who dedicate themselves to understanding the ultimate reality go to a greater darkness. You have to walk me through the mechanics of that.
It's brilliant. Shankaracharya views this as a profound warning against the spiritual ego, which he argues is actually far more insidious than the material ego.
Okay.
Let's look at the person devoted only to avidya, the pure materialist. They are caught in the rat race, acquiring wealth, acting entirely out of selfish desires.
Right, they are in pitch darkness.
Yes, but they are still engaging with the friction of reality. They suffer, they fail, they hit rock bottom, and through that suffering, they eventually learn and evolve. They are in motion.
They are getting immediate, painful feedback from the simulation.
Exactly. The stove is hot, they touch it, they burn their hand, they learn. But now consider the person who reads a few texts on non-duality, intellectually grasps the concept that the world is an illusion, and uses that philosophical high ground as a mechanism to bypass their human responsibilities.
Oh, I've met this person.
We all have. They become aloof. They view the struggles of ordinary people with this, like smug condescension. They sever their emotional ties not out of true non-attachment, but out of cold indifference.
It's the spiritual bypass. They are using the concept of ultimate reality as a shield to protect themselves from the vulnerability of relative reality.
And that is a greater darkness, because the prison walls of the spiritual ego are lined with self-righteousness.
Wow.
The materialist knows they are suffering. The spiritual narcissist thinks they are enlightened. They are completely insulated from the feedback loop of life. They don't touch the stove anymore.
So if leaning entirely into material action is pitch darkness, and leaning entirely into philosophical detachment is a greater darkness, what is the protocol for the listener? How do we avoid both ditches?
Mantra 11 provides the exact protocol.
Vayami.
He who knows both vidya and avidya together transcends mortality through avidya and reaches immortality through vidya. The key word there is together.
Together. So it is a simultaneous harmonization.
Yes.
Let's break down that mechanism. So we use avidya, our physical engagement, our daily chores, our careers, our relationships as the grinding stone.
Right.
We don't escape it, we press ourselves into it, but we act without outcome dependency, like the detached draft exercise. The friction of the material world is the only thing abrasive enough to file down the ego.
Yes. You transcend mortality through engaging with the mortal realm correctly.
And simultaneously, we utilize vidya, our meditation, our self-inquiry, our anchor to the unmoving canvas to ensure we don't get lost in the paint.
Beautifully said.
It's a biological rhythm. It's like breathing.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Action in the world is your exhale. You are expelling energy, engaging, doing. Contemplation and knowledge is your inhale. You're pulling back to the source, remembering who you are.
Right.
If you only inhale devotion only to vidya, you pass out. If you only exhale devotion only to material action, you suffocate.
The liberated life is the perfect, unbroken rhythm of both, inhaling and exhaling.
It is the ultimate harmonization of the human experience.
And once a person has stabilized that rhythm, once they have lived their 100 years, acting without attachment, seeing the self in all beings, and balancing knowledge with duty, the Upanishad guides us to the final threshold.
Yeah, the final mantras, 15 through 18, shift tone dramatically. They are practically prayers for the moment of death.
They are. In the Indian tradition, these specific verses are actually recited at cremations.
Really?
Yes. They are the blueprint for the final transition, the ultimate dismantling of the covering we discussed back in the first mantra.
Let's look at mantra 15. It reads, "The face of the truth is veiled by a bright vessel. Mayest thou unveil it, O sun, so as to be perceived by me whose dharma is truth."
A bright vessel.
Yeah. What is the bright vessel or the golden orb here? Because we usually associate light with truth, but here the light is the obstacle.
This is perhaps Shankaracharya's most nuanced and maybe controversial point.
Okay.
As you advance spiritually, you don't just encounter dark obstacles. You encounter blindingly beautiful distractions.
Interesting.
The bright vessel represents the highest, most dazzling aspects of relative reality. In a secular sense, this could be immense worldly success or profound intellectual brilliance. But in a mystical context, it refers to spiritual highs.
Like visions.
Visions, overwhelming states of bliss, the perception of deities or cosmic light during meditation.
So it's the danger of the mystical experience.
Precisely. The seeker can become so intoxicated by the beautiful light that they mistake the light for the source. They worship the golden lid instead of demanding it be removed.
Wow.
The prayer here is a radical insistence on ultimate truth. Remove even the most beautiful illusions. I do not want the light. I want the formless, unmanifested reality behind it.
Don't settle for the shiny object.
Exactly. Keep going.
Which leads perfectly to the final surrender in Mantra 17. Let my vital air now attain the immortal air. Then let this body be reduced to ashes. Om, O mind, remember that which has been done.
Reduce to ashes.
Yeah. At the point of physical dissolution, the elements simply return to the elements. The body, which is just a temporary construct, is reduced to ashes.
But the prana, the vital life force, is recognized not as a localized, trapped entity, but as a temporary expression of the immortal, all-pervading air.
The boundary of the drop vanishes, and it simply realizes it is the ocean.
Yes.
There is zero tragedy in the phrase, let this body be reduced to ashes. When you have spent your life viewing the body as a temporary covering, its dissolution isn't a violent ending, it's just taking off a heavy coat you no longer need.
Right, the VR headset powers down.
Exactly. But I think it's critical to point out that we don't have to wait for the literal end of our biological lives to utilize this mantra.
How would you apply it in the present moment?
By viewing every single meditation session as a micro-death.
The micro-death, I like that.
When you sit in silence and you systematically withdraw your attention from your physical senses, your anxieties about tomorrow, your regrets about yesterday, you are letting the ego turn to ashes in real time.
You are practicing the dissolution.
Yes. Every time you catch yourself spiraling over a work outcome and you execute the detached draft protocol, you are letting a piece of the false self burn away. You are allowing the mind to remember its immortal nature right here on a Tuesday afternoon.
That is the absolute essence of simplified awakening. You do not wait for the end of the movie to realize you are in a theater. You cultivate that dual awareness right now.
So let's pull all these threads together.
Let's do it.
The mission of this deep dive was to unpack Shankaracharya's perspective on the Isha Upanishad. And I think it delivers a ruthlessly efficient operational manual for human consciousness.
It really does.
It challenges us to look at the material world, recognize it as a superimposed illusion, and instead of running away from it, to engage with it entirely.
Actively.
Right. To renounce our desperate need to own outcomes and thereby grant ourselves permission to truly enjoy the experience.
Enjoy through renunciation.
It warns us to avoid the trap of spiritual arrogance, demanding that we anchor our profound metaphysical insights in the gritty, daily friction of selfless action.
The inhale and the exhale.
Exactly. And ultimately, it points us to the realization that the conscious witness inside of us is not a fragment, but the entirety of the divine canvas.
Renounce the illusion of ownership and enjoy the reality of being. Act with total dedication but absolute non-attachment. Realize the self as Brahman.
It is a series of paradoxes that, when put into practice, resolve into perfect, unshakable clarity. Before we sign off, I want to remind you to hit subscribe, drop a like, and leave a comment below. What was the most challenging paradox from the Isha Upanishad for you? And if you try the detached draft exercise this week, report back on how it physically felt to sever that outcome dependency.
We want to hear about that reset feeling.
We really do. We have upcoming deep dives planned for other principal Upanishads with Shankaracharya's commentaries, so make sure you stick around for those.
And I want to leave you with a thought experiment to mull over, one that takes the implications of today's text to its absolute logical conclusion.
Okay, let's hear it.
If, as the Upanishad claims, the self is perfectly non-dual, if it is bodiless, omnipresent, and the only true underlying reality,
Right.
then the conscious awareness you are using to process my voice right now and the conscious awareness generating the words I am speaking are fundamentally the exact same entity.
Oh, wow.
You are not an isolated person listening to a deep dive about the universe. You are the universe, momentarily utilizing a human nervous system to listen to itself.
Keep churning the mind. We'll see you next time.